Hello and welcome to today's video. Today we are joined with a special guest and we are going to be talking about Batman Arkham Asylum. So hello, welcome to the channel.
Having me.
So we're going to be discussing kind of why the Arkham Asylum specifically succeed and kind of why was it so good. So we're going to break it down into 5 different points. Point 1. I think the main part of it was that the ambience of the game was so good, because you know how like City wasn't more open world and Night and Origins even more so. It never really felt as trapped as you did, and like Asylum felt spooky. You genuinely felt like, especially when all the crazy people got released, you genuinely felt like if you turned a corner, something's going to jump out at you. I was running around with detective mode the most in that game than any of the others.
No, yeah. Yeah, you always feel like someone's watching you.
Yeah, I mean, especially as we know the Joker is, so it just adds to the eeriness even more.
Yeah, I'd say he probably is watching you most of the time.
And then that, Scarecrow had his little secret bunker, and the Riddler's there somewhere, so them two could be watching you as well. It's quite scary.
Yeah, the Scarecrow sections are always my favourite.
Yeah, the good part of the game. They added to like the ambience of the game as well, because they felt very kind of spooky and just grim, but like the whole game just felt so grim, and it did not feel like a nice place that you wanted to be, never mind being strapped in at night with a load of lunatics.
Yeah, no, it was definitely creepy. It was set on Halloween as well, so it was like...
Also, I didn't know that.
Okay, well...
I think
it's set on Halloween.
It's mad as well that, like, because all the other Arkham installments had, like an actual moving, living city. But it's weird that this one almost feels the most alive, but like it feels so alive and so dead at the same time. It feels like a place where the inmates, the workers and the doctors actually lived.
It progressively gets more dead as you go along.
Yeah.
You find less and less guards around
as they move through.
It goes along. When they had the really crazy people around, like then it becomes sort of alive again. Oh yeah, they used to scare me. Yeah, but it feels more alive towards the end when they had that.
I hate when the scary things jump out of a vent. I can't deal with that.
Oh yeah, the one isn't there. The one jumps out, like one jumps around the corner at you or like out of a vent.
Yeah, and they scream as well. I'm like, can you just not? Like, if you were just gonna walk up to me and just be like, hey, I'm fine with that, but don't scream. It's just scary. Anyway, moving on to point 2. That is your point about the gameplay. So I'll let you kind of lead that one.
Basically, just especially at the time, like I said, is just very, very new. It was very unique for the time. I think even some games had done it before, like Spider-Man 3, for an example. Maybe not a very good one, but it had done it, and it wasn't particularly overcomplicated either. Like it wasn't like loads of buttons to press.
Yeah, it's not like hold RT, then click Y, then X, and if not, you're gonna die. It was very much like just spam, but make sure you spam the right ones at the right time. Yeah,
it was spam, but it also had like a rhythm to it, because that's what Asylum was, like a music rhythm game or something apparently. So, you can see how we got to the combat system from that, because like countering has to be timed and combos have to be timed, which just gave it a very fresh feel to it, because also the traversal as well, like gliding and running, so it made it a bit more interesting to get from point A to point B.
And I think as well, like you said, with the gameplay, with like the combat, it was good how with with the villains and stuff, with the different type of kind of variants you could assault, like the people with the tasers, the people with the knives. Obviously it was nowhere near as what it is like to the end with Night, but it was still good to have some variety and not just people just punching you the whole time.
Yeah, like there's like it's not as like extensive as the City and Origins are pretty similar, but or as Night, it's not as extensive in terms of what you can do.
Yeah, it's very much just punch.
New thing, but it's still really fun.
Yeah, it's still, I played it recently, it just flows well. You're not going to get bored doing it. It never feels repetitive.
No, I don't think it does either, because it just, as the game goes on, with all of them, we have more difficult enemies that adapt.
That's something I'm excited to see in Arkham, in Gotham Knights, is how they handle that combat. Because obviously it's going to have to be different to the Arkham series. But the question is, if you push it too different, then it's not going to be good. Yeah, it does look similar, which I'm very glad. If it was the same, I think everyone would be happy. But, you know, I think for legal reasons, it can't be exactly the same.
Yeah, and then you get the stealth sections as well, which are just like they really made you feel like it reminds me of Batman Begins in the docks when you can't see him.
I think it's good as well as how when the game goes on it gets harder. Like, you know, the gargoyles you can't use because they explode. They have the suicide collars. It's just there's more and more of them too.
It made it and they added to that in the later games as well. So it made you had to kind of like adapt and think about what you were doing before you did it.
Because like, you know, in the
gadgets as well.
Yeah, the gadgets definitely helps in stealth as well. You know, you have to maybe use the sonic batarang to distract and then go get the person on the other side of the room. And you know how you said in other games, in City, you'd have to take out the person with the signal jammer first, and then the people with the heat vision, and then you do the leftovers.
And I didn't even mention the upgrade system either.
Oh yeah, that's a good point of the gameplay. I think
a lot more moves
good.
And gadgets and health, obviously health, but you can pull off, like, as the game goes on, you feel like you're becoming more experienced.
Yeah, you feel like Batman. You're becoming a better Batman.
Yeah. He's quite far down the line. He's like 8 years being Batman or something.
Yeah, because Origins is his first year, and it's way before Asylum.
Origins is like his second year being Batman, so it was a bit more. He feels a bit more clunky, which is fine because he's younger.
Yeah. And that's worked into the plot of Origins as well. But, you know, talking about the plot, moving on to point 3, that was again my point with the story. I think, you know, all of the Arkham stories, they all have that feeling of like a wild goose chase. You know, like you go from one thing to another, then back, and then go again. But I think the Asylum game itself, its plot moved the most smoothly compared to all of the others. I can't really speak that much for Origins because I don't remember the plot that much. But for the main installments of Rocksteady, I think Asylum was the best. Because rather than, you know, going to like Penguin in City and then him just being like, no, go there to find Freeze instead. In Asylum, it was like, you know, you go to the place you need to go, but you can't. So then you go the other way, but then you get sidetracked by like Killer Croc or Harley Quinn.
Yeah. As the game progresses, you see more areas of it, like of the Asylum. Like it's not all there at once.
Yeah, I think that's a good part of it as well, because City is all unlocked. I don't know if I think I might be, unless I'm thinking of another game, but isn't Orange and Night, some parts are locked off at first?
Only Night, I think.
Yeah, I think that's something that Night does good as well, but, you know...
As the city. It has the city map as well.
Yeah, because if you give everything at once, it just doesn't feel... You know, you have nothing to progress from that. But like how with Asylum, you go from being an outside, from being in the inside, to then, you know, all the outside stuff, to then going into each individual bits, and then you have like, you know, West Arkham, East Arkham, and all the different zones. It felt like an actual good story, and it progressed.
The easiest to get lost in somehow, and I don't really know how it does it.
I think it's because...
But it's the easiest to lose your way, and you're like, hang on, where have I just come from?
In City, I think it's because, one, if you're outside, you know, you can just zoom off to the next place and get some height. But also, even when you're inside in City, it very much feels like the inside of the buildings are much smaller. It's only there for the bits that you need to go in for the plot or like the gameplay. But Asylum, there's so many just extra rooms just to make you get lost in on purpose. And I think that's why it's so good. Yeah, it's just it's such a good
stuff you can. And graphically as well, it's not like, well, it is still something like Batman's character model, like the face and stuff, still looks amazing. Like,
especially in Return to Arkham.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't look like incredible like now. Like, it doesn't look incredible by today's time, like compared to Red Dead 2, but it still looks amazing.
Yeah, So moving on to your next point, which was of course about. Hold on, I have lost it. Was that about the characters?
Yes.
Yeah. So you take the
Ju-
lead on
It
that.
was just vibrant, and just how vibrant and colourful they are.
Mm.
Rose Gallery is
They feel like
colourful.
they're not just there to beat up. They have an actual story to them.
Yeah, like they all feel a bit like, well, not in the Nolan films, but like Batman media, they all feel a bit theatrical, like Batman,
Hmm.
and a bit like this. They feel like they're supposed to match that energy.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the
Theatrical.
ones like Scarecrow and Harley Quinn really match the energy of the Asylum with that. It makes no sense how Batman didn't stop Joker, and that just adds to all that they're just literally all nutty and crazy at.
Yeah, they're not interested in it. It's a bit like it's a bit like the Nightfall. Nightfall? Is that the right comic? So, where Bane breaks all the villains out of the asylum. It feels a bit like that.
Yeah, they're just doing it for the sake of being crazy, pretty much.
Running around the asylum, like clearing up all the villains before you get to the big bad.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the big bad itself at the finale, that fight needs a little bit of work. Maybe that's for its own video. But as far as the actual characters go, and the plots to them, and obviously the designs, I think they fit just the Arkham games as a whole really well. Especially
Yeah, because
the
you had
Joker.
Paul, in Asylum, you had Paul Dini writing, who obviously worked on the animated series, so we'd already written those characters. Even though they do feel different for the animated series, but they're still, you can still see his experience accentuated into it.
Yeah, they definitely, you know, and it adds to all the boss fights as well, because it feels like you're fighting that character. It doesn't feel like every boss fight's the same, just a different kind of skin. It actually feels like that character, you know, it's personal when you're fighting them.
Bane does feel a bit like the Titan fights.
I think Bane needs to, though, as it's the first proper boss fight.
Yeah, they couldn't really throw anything too crazy at it.
Yeah, they needed to get you ready for the, you know, increasing amounts of Titans coming your way.
And the Scarecrow one's not, well, the Scarecrow's like not really, well, it's not a boss fight, but it's still fun.
Yeah, it's great. They're all great, the Scarecrow.
Still creepy.
Talking about obviously Scarecrows and the characters, let's move on to our final point, which is obviously about the voice actors. I think having Mark Hamill as the Joker, and obviously the thing is Batman, is great.
Yeah, recasting Conroy and Hamill. And Harley Quinn.
Yes.
I can't remember who voices it, but she does it in the graphic novels, animated series as well. So to have those three back,
It makes it
together
feel like,
for the
it
games,
actually makes it
it's,
feel like you're walking through one of the shows, rather than just like, you know,
Yeah.
kind of playing out a script. You're actually living the show as Batman.
and Conroy's like, he's not over the top, but he is a little bit in Asylum, and it's great.
But it adds
And,
the whole kind of theatrical side, as you said earlier, with Asylum.
Yeah, he's got probably the best Batman voice. 'Cause
Yeah,
he doesn't
definitely.
really have to put it on.
Yeah, it does.
He's
It's
not
not
put it
like
on.
he's making a deep voice that's different to his Bruce Wayne voice. They literally sound the same. He's just kind of saying the words a bit differently.
Put on like a slightly different deeper voice of Batman, but it's
Yeah.
only like slightly, which is fine. It's subtle rather than.
But it's not like kind of, you know, the Bale in like the Dark Knight trilogy.
I didn't mind the Bale.
No, I think
first
that's
two,
really good. I
it
think
was-
it's just, it feels a bit forced.
It's when he got to Dark Knight Rises, and it was like just a bit too much in that one.
I think maybe a part of
In
that
the-
is obviously to do with Bane and trying to balance it out.
Yeah. In Begins though, it's probably the best in Begins because he doesn't really growl that much. It's a slight.
Yeah, it's the growling that
it's
sounds
a
weird.
slight- It's a slight like he puts on a slight voice rather than a bigger one.
That's why I think in this game the characters, you know, the designs of them and the voice actors are so important, because they wanted the Asylum series as a whole, and obviously starting with this game, to feel like one big continuous story, and having not only the same voice actors, obviously through them all except Origins, you know, it does feel like one big story.
Yeah, well, I think they must have had a sequel planned because they teased it in Asylum. They teased it in Asylum. If you look in there's an
With Arkham
explosive
City.
wall, and you can find. Oh, I don't know if it was just supposed to be a bit of fun or whether they really had planned a sequel.
When you read through the Arkham stories in Arkham City, like all the bios and stuff, you actually it mentions how Batman returns to that office and basically copies all of the data for Arkham City, and that's how when he goes in, he already knows like all his way around and everything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, that's kind of I think why the Arkham game succeeded so much and why it was so good. So just quickly before we end the video, what would you rank this game out of 10?
Out of 10? Ooh, I've never thought about that. Ooh, it's got to be above a 9. It's got to be like a 9.
I'm gonna say probably a 9.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably. I'll do it in I had decimals.
Yeah.
So I'll say 9.7. The only thing that lets it down really is the boss battles.
Yeah, especially the last one.
As good as they're not as well. They're better than 9s, but
they're not as good as Origins and City.
Yeah.
So yeah,
but they're still good.
Yeah, they're great.
It was the first. It's not really that.
Let us know what you think in the comment section down below about, maybe what your favourite Arkham game is, why you think it's such a good game, and what you'd rank it out of 10. There'll be more videos like this. We'll have, I think it's 3 more after this, about obviously Arkham City, Arkham Origins, and then of course Arkham Knight. Let us know if you want to see maybe some videos on Gotham Knight, or just any more Arkham related videos. Thanks for watching, have a lovely day, evening, or wherever you are in the world, and bye bye.